Wallace and Gromit will always hold a nostalgic place in my heart, and given the BBC and Netflix are treating us to the character's second feature film this Christmas, I couldn't help but look back at the short films that decorated my childhood. And not only did I enjoy every second, but it also gave me a deeper appreciation for its visual storytelling, and helped me to see just what makes Wallace and Gromit so special. So firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wallace and Gromit is a famous British stop-motion animation series. They've won 2 Oscars for Best Animated Short and 1 Oscar for Best Animated Feature. Their first adventure, A Grand Day Out, took over 6 years to create, utilising funding and assistance from the National Film and Television School, with a modest £11,000 budget in 1989. Everything you see on screen is handcrafted, which gives the films a more intimate feel, as you can literally see fingerprints on the characters. Although the increase in budget and manpower has turned this humble passion project into a mainstream hit, the reality of stop-motion animation is that it still remains incredibly time-consuming to get right. It's a frame-by-frame endeavour, and even with a $30 million budget for their first feature film, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, Aardman Studios still only managed to create an average of 3 seconds of usable footage per day. Which is no surprise, as from the foreground to the background, to the action sequences with the camera movements and beyond, the attention to detail is so impressive that it's hard to believe it's all plasticine. But I think the time-consuming nature of the process leads to more airtight storytelling, as you're hardly going to write a random aside that will take weeks, months, or years to create unless it's essential to the story.
And there was one paragraph that just said, "There is now a sequence where Wallace and Gromit build a rocket." That paragraph took me 1.5 years to film.
This is why from the very opening of each Wallace and Gromit film, we jump straight into the key information. A Grand Day Out opens with holiday magazines, and then an exhausted Wallace looks into the empty fridge for cheese, and bingo, they decide their holiday destination is the moon. The Wrong Trousers opens by telling us it's Gromit's birthday, then by spending money on creating Gromit's gift of an electric walking system. Wallace is broke and needs to take in a lodger. In A Close Shave, Shaun the Sheep escapes from the truck, and this disrupts the title character's morning routine as someone's been nibbling on everything in the house. And in A Matter of Loaf and Death, we open with a baker getting murdered, and then quickly discover Wallace is also a baker now, so we know he's in danger. Script-wise, everything serves a purpose, so if something gets planted, you can trust that it will have a payoff. Even though the short films are, well, short, they feel like cinema, as the creators don't waste anything. The more visual storytelling they can cram into a single shot, the better. So oftentimes when the dramatic A story is taking place in the foreground, we can still see the comedic B story unfolding in the background, even if it's in complete contrast to the suspenseful or romantic tone we're meant to be focused on. And with so many non-speaking characters, a lot of trust is put in the animators to do their talking for them.
The animators take a brief from me if I'm directing them, and I talk to them like they're an actor. What I'm after from them is a performance. Once you've given them their brief, they have to put the performance into the character.
And what's so impressive is how some of the most emotionally compelling scenes are non-verbal. We can have a completely iconic battle between 2 silent characters. Nothing needs to be said, and not just because of how strong the storytelling is, but because of the little visual nuances the animators come up with to humanize them. For instance, in A Grand Day Out, the robot's emotional state is expressed exclusively through its arms and hands. Whether it's slowly waking up, devastated its dreams will never come true, planning a sinister act of revenge, or finally pleading, "Take me with you," which is accompanied by the sound of the hinges squeaking, resembling the whimpering squeals of a crying animal. Part of the charm of Wallace and Gromit is the whimsical tone of its storytelling. On paper, it's just a series about a cheese-loving inventor and his loyal dog, but it's the inventiveness of the writing that's really showcased here. For instance, when Wallace builds a rocket ship in his basement, in order for it to blast off, you have to light a fuse like you're lighting a firework. I love this detail, because due to the fact it's a kids film, creator Nick Park is clearly using a child's understanding of firing a rocket. And because it then works and the characters go on their fun adventure, this stimulates a child's imagination much more than getting bogged down in realism. If it were realistic, obviously Wallace could just go down the road and buy some cheese. But no, he builds a rocket ship to the moon, no matter how long it takes. In fact, most of his inventions are just convoluted ways for him to avoid doing boring everyday tasks, like getting dressed or cooking breakfast. And the humour is found in how far Wallace will go out of his way to make this daily inconvenience slightly better. Whereas Gromit just gets on with it, as he sees how over the top this all is. But if you're going to make mundane daily activities more fun and exciting for the viewer, then the pressure is really on when it comes to the film's actual action sequences. And yet somehow, despite being at such a disadvantage with stop-motion animation, Wallace and Gromit contains some of the most creative action sequences you'll find in any animated movie, where the stakes are always rising beat by beat. Particularly in The Wrong Trousers, which is by far my favourite Wallace and Gromit film, as it has everything. You'll laugh, you'll cry, there's genuine suspense, and a fun-filled, adrenaline-fueled ending. There are just so many little endearing flourishes throughout that really capture the audience's imagination. Like in the final chase sequence, where we get a Mission Impossible style train showdown with all the same ups, downs, twists and turns, except it's taking place in a small English home on a children's playset. And after the villain disconnects his carriage and changes our hero's track towards a dead end, just when it seems all is lost, Gromit picks up some spare track from the side and starts rapidly creating a new track in front of them so that they can continue the chase. We see similar creative flourishes in A Close Shave, when they're chasing down the villain by bike, but he outsmarts them by secretly parking to one side and then coming at them from behind. So Gromit unexpectedly uses the ladder to climb up and grab an electricity line so that they can loop around and find themselves back behind the truck. So you see, the inventiveness of the writing makes it an absolute joy to watch, as you genuinely can't predict what's going to happen next, because it's not operating within the scientific rules of our reality, but it's finding an alternative use for the everyday items in our lives. For example, if you're small enough, why shouldn't a retrieve button on a measuring tape be a form of transportation? Why can't a ceramic lampshade double up as a bulletproof helmet? And in theory, can't any flat plank-like material be used as a ski? But a hero is only as good as the villain they have to overcome. And for a kid's story, these villains are surprisingly wicked. If they're not trying to frame Wallace for robbery, then they're planning to outright murder him, or turn them all into dog food. Although every dog owner naturally views their pet as their loyal sidekick, Gromit is actually the real hero of these films, as he's the only one who sees what's really going on, while Wallace naively walks face first into trouble. Therefore, the villain's first move is always to separate the iconic duo, both physically and emotionally. Gromit has to be taken out of the picture as he's too intelligent. But the strategies the antagonists employ are quite dark. In A Close Shave, he's wrongly accused of murder and given life in prison. In A Matter of Loaf and Death, he's wrongly accused of biting Wallace's love interest, so he gets muzzled and chained up. And in The Wrong Trousers, Feathers McGraw psychologically chips away at poor Gromit until he decides to leave himself. This manipulative plot happens in 3 steps. The Penguin's first step is taking Gromit's room, so that he feels physically pushed aside and out of sorts. Step 2, he then blasts loud music from his room all night to torture his target with sleep deprivation tactics until he has to resort to sleeping outside. And step 3, he then outpaces Gromit so that he's no longer as much use to his owner as he once was. Now Wallace has a paying tenant who puts on his slippers, brings him his newspaper, and stays up late for boozy wine and cheese nights, essentially replacing man's best friend. This conniving strategy to slowly separate dog from owner is one of the most heartbreaking sequences to watch, as there's no one more loyal than a dog, making the audience recognize that this penguin, whoever he is just pure evil. As sure, there are other villains that commit more heinous crimes, but they somehow don't feel as calloused as someone willing to bully an innocent dog. And now 30 years later, they're about to bring back this sadistic schemer in their second feature film. And I personally can't wait. As although the first 3 adventures reign supreme, Wallace and Gromit always delivers. Because when every frame requires this much work to produce, the storytelling team really have to hone their craft and do more with less. This then creates a much more rewarding experience for the viewer, and even motivates them to pay closer attention, as you know that if the creators were incentivized not to waste their own time, then they're not going to waste yours either. And you can sit back safe in the knowledge that whatever they've come up with is all going to fit together seamlessly. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.